So, hello everybody, welcome back to the Andy Rogers podcast. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Calvin and Charlie for Strong Opinion Hibs. How are we doing, boys?
Good, mate. Thank you for having us on.
Pleasure, man.
I'm doing good as well, mate. I just as Charlie said, mate, thanks for having us on. It's quite cool to be on a different podcast that isn't ours for a change. It's nice.
I'd said to Charles, like, do you think you did fancy coming on doing this? Because I done sort of series one last year, patched it off and thought, right, let's kick it with hit the new year and we'll absolutely just get everybody on that I can get on. But anyway, to start us off, who's your favourite Hibs players growing up? Start off nice and easy.
I think my favourite player, as early as I can remember, was Tam McManus. And I think that was just because he was the goal scorer. Like when I was younger, I used to want to be the goal scorer for Hibs. Yeah, I wanted to be the striker. And as I saw it, that was like a very young age. You're talking about 4 or 5, maybe even 6. And then as time sort of went on, when the golden generation came through, the likes of Riordan, O'Connor, and that was Riordan for me. Like I had the mohawk and that. And
I think we're all the same that year, aren't we?
Aye, absolutely. So for me,
Derek Riordan.
DK.
For myself, when I started going, I've always been a defender, so I like to look for the defenders in the team. And my first favourite player was Matthias Doumbé back in 2003 time. And, you know, it was the first ever time when he left was the first time that I ever really experienced heartache watching a football team. I never knew what it was, but I was gutted when he left. And then, obviously, like Calvin said, you know, the golden generation came through and Stephen Whittaker stood out for that lot for me being a defender. So Doumbé and Whittaker were my 2 favourites growing up.
No, I get that. I'm a couple of years older than the Perrys, so for me growing up it was like Latapi and Sozi. But proper going into it, it's Riordan for me. Always will be.
Aye, I missed that era. Unfortunately, I missed that era when I was younger. I
was just as
all of that.
But that era of the club skint us, and then obviously that's the reason why we got we did get our golden generation, like so Riordan, O'Connor, Brown, Whittaker, Thompson, and that. So I think it was a sliding doors moment when you look back on the history of Hibs. We wouldn't have what we had if we didn't have those sort of big players coming in. So starting the podcast, boys, who's your sort of influences going into podcasting?
I think it was a hard one for me because, you know, it's Calvin's baby originally. And sort of, you know, I was lucky enough to be asked to do it with him. I didn't for a second think it would be a year later I'm still doing it. I thought it was maybe like a 1 or 2 week thing. But for me personally, I love, you know, listening to podcasts in general. And I think, like, especially on the Hibs market, you know, there's a few of them. And I think the one that I listened to most was the Long Bangers. And I think, you know, I don't know if you would agree, Calvin, but I've taken a lot of inspiration from what they do and how they are different. And, you know, like Hibs talk as well and down the slope. But all of them really have shaped the way I do things. But I probably coming into Long Bangers are probably the one that I listened to most as we were gearing up to get started.
For me, I used to listen to Hibs talk when it first came out religiously each week, and I used to love it. I used to think like I didn't really know what a podcast was, to be honest with you. I wasn't like I knew that these guys were posting it on some of the Hibs pages I was on, and I could click on it and listen to it. But I didn't ken that there was like podcasts on everything from cooking to history to football to whatever. And for me, I said I like listening to Hibs talk, and I used to think, how did these guys get on this? Like, how did they get selected to be on this? I didn't really understand like how it worked. If that sounds stupid, but I used to think, how did they do that? Like, I loved what they were talking about. And when they were talking, I felt like when I was listening, I could feel like myself, like, want to jump in and give my opinion. Do you know what I mean? Like, just listening to them do it away and that. And I was thinking, well, what about this player? No, I didn't agree with that. And I agree with this. And, you know, I'd speak to my dad about it. I got my dad on it. And me and him would speak about Hibs talk. So I really liked what those boys done.
Good lads as well, definitely.
Aye, completely. So for the idea of the podcast, to be honest with you, like I studied graphics now at uni, and I really enjoy just making stuff look smart with like visuals and that. And I was during the first lockdown, I was bored. Like I'd moved out in that, and I was bored at the house, and I was just thinking to myself like, got to draw a logo or something. I just do something like fun that I like, design a wee logo or something. And I had an idea, like you can see it behind me. I had an idea for this Strong Opinion Hibs logo, and it kind of comes from the old Planet badge. I don't know if you can see it, but
I was thinking that myself.
you've got the football, so for like that's in the Planet badge, and you know how in the Planet badge the two stripes go across like that. So I just took the football, put it there, and I took the two stripes and just spinned it, and then kept coming back like that. And that's sort of where the idea originated from. I've wanted to make like a wee animation where like it all comes together and that, so you can see the idea. But
that's cool.
I just drew it and I thought, Christ, that's quite smart. Yeah, I thought I quite like that. And I just wrote Strong Opinion Hibs on it. I didn't even know what it meant. And then I showed my missus and that, and she was like, oh, that's really cool, that's really cool and that. Because I talked a wee bit to Charlie, but doing a podcast, but I thought to myself during the lockdown, like all these other guys are doing podcasts. That I thought, I could do that. Like I wondered if what. When I first moved in with my missus, like I would talk about Hibs all the time, and she said, "Oh, did you hear this about Hibs? Hear that today?" And she was like, "I think Ken, I think she was getting a bit bored of it, and I think she's getting a bit bored of it. So she thought, like, why do you not record it? I'm like, why can you were talking about doing a podcast? Why do you know if you want us to do one and talk from yourselves and that?" So that's sort of how it started for me anyway. And obviously it was great Charlie was up for it, because if he wasn't up for it, then I probably wouldn't have done it myself, I'd have been struggling. A lot of my mates are staunch jambos, so I wouldn't have been struggling.
It's murder of the name of mates.
Ken, all my base mates are honestly, they're all hearts through and through, and they all go together, and I'm the only one left out, so not very good.
No, quality. So that sort of covered my next question, how you see other Hibs podcasts. But I think both of you have just summed that up. All the guys are doing good work, long bangers and that, Hibs talk, down the slope. Obviously, long bangers, they've got short bangers as well, which is, I thought it was pretty interesting and a good side thing to do, what they've done.
They've been really good to us long bangers. When I was, just to get a wee bit of background, when I first started doing it, I didn't ken how to put it on YouTube. I know how to put it on YouTube, I didn't ken how to put it on Spotify and all these other things you can listen to on. So I actually sent him a DM, and Matty got back to me and told me, Ken, go on this thing, anchor.fm, and you can put
That's
it up
what
there.
I use.
That just puts it everywhere. So they were really helpful with that. But no, the other Hibs podcast, I probably didn't touch on some of them as much as I'd like to, but as you say, like long bangers and that, like just a good community. Like even though it's a podcast, like the community on Twitter and that's dead sound. Like everybody sees each other's stuff. Like it's not try and not make it competitive, because obviously it's a small market and it will be competitive. Like everybody wants to, make sure their stuff's being retweeted and put out and that. But I think as a community, we're quite good at like supporting each other as well. And it's good because we're
lost you a bit there, Calvin.
Just to say, no, it's a good community and that on Twitter and that way with all the guys and that, and they all support each other, so it's good. Like,
I do remember I was in Hibs talking on it through Twitch. I don't know if they still do it now, but even I was getting feedback from when I started my podcast last year. I thought, wow, this is mental. Thanks, because I just thought mine was just my first couple ones. I look back on them now, I'm going, oh, that's so bad. Just so bad. So you started the podcast and that. You've obviously had Marcelo on, you've had other guests on, and you've had like people from Hibs on. Who's been your sort of favourite guest and why? Just Charlie, you go first with this one.
I didn't want to bang the drum that we've had Ron Gordon on, but
no, I want you to keep banging it on.
No, so I think Ron's definitely been my favourite one we've had, purely because it's such an influential figure at the club. And like when we started this podcast, me and Calvin, it was just a way to chat each week about Hibs, and never for a second did I think we've had him on, we've had 3 of the women's players on, we've had we've got stuff in the pipe. We've had, other fans' podcasts, like, like stuff that we would never ever dream of at the start's happened. And, I think for sure Ron's been the best one we've had just now. And, that's just a massive credit to the club being that willing to work with the partner with the podcast community and just, offer us, hey, if you want to speak to a member of the club, you can. And I think that's been massive. So for me, I definitely Ron Gordon.
Yeah.
I'd agree with Charlie. Like, obviously, like when we first started it, like I said, I didn't expect anyone to listen. I didn't kind of, I would listen. I knew I would listen back to it, but I didn't think like other folk would be interested in what we had to say. So I didn't think many folk would listen. So to sit here now and think, like Charlie said, Ken, we've had Siobhan Hunter for the women's team on. That was a really good episode. We've had Emily Much, the goalkeeper. We've had likes of Ron Gordon. Tam McManus has done a wee stint with us as well. Just a lot of people that you never think you'd never dream of having on your podcast. But for me, I think my most favourite guest has probably been probably Jack Gillies. To be honest with you, when Jack came on, I think like at the start, I think Jack was our only listener. Because we used to put out saying, has anyone got any listener questions? And Jack was the only one who used to write back most of the time. And I thought, who is this guy? Like, I don't ken who he is, but like he's obviously listening because he's ken. He was asking us about things we talked about the previous week and that. And I thought, all right. And he came on in that, and like I never thought that for meeting him there was no way in my mind that I thought that I would have had the friendship that I do with Jack now. Like, and I could text Jack, how you doing today, mate? Like, blah, blah, blah. And we could sit and text for kind of a couple hours or whatever. Like, I would say to Jack, do you fancy go to the cinema or do you fancy go to watch a match or something together? Like, or an away game or something. Like, he'll go. Like, I never thought anything like that would have ever happened over the pod for folk listening on the podcast and that. So for me, like, long term, it's probably been Jack in a way. And I'm sure Charlie's
top lad.
I think just to touch on that, I'm sure Jack wouldn't be embarrassed by us saying this, but like another group of people had reached out to us saying, look, Jack's desperate to come on your podcast. And I was like, oh, he's going to offer, like I didn't know what he's going to offer us that's different to what we're saying, but just his depth of knowledge on like even the women's team, like Ken, like when we started that podcast, I've got to be honest with you, I never had an interest at all in women's football. And I think that's a very common theme among football in general. Like, it's not a very popular thing, but to have that with Jack now, and I have an active interest in how the women's team are doing, and that's purely down to Jack. So I would agree, Calvin. Like, Jack's now probably one of both of our best mates, and like Calvin said, we'd never have dreamt of that when we started the podcast, to have someone else who you consider a good mate from it. So I definitely agree with that, with what Calvin's saying.
So, having Jack on, this isn't actually on the sheet, it's just because we spoke about Jack and it's taken a bit of my next bit away. So he's ended up at the Edinburgh Derby in your suits, all looking dapper. How was that, getting treated to the VIP, you were in the media after it? You just clicked a memory into my brain there.
That was like a full circle moment for me. Like I like, again, it sounds silly, but I can remember sitting like thinking like, I can't believe I just drew a logo and messaged Charlie being like, here, do you fancy like trying to do like a Hibs podcast? Because like I can just see how it goes. Because we were doing a lot of Zoom meetings at work and that, and I thought, Chris, they record them, like that's easy enough to do. Like I could do that. And then I never thought in a million years for doing that I'd be sitting at Easter Road with two of my best mates, having a good night. And obviously Charlie's partner as well, which was good. She came along as well, and it was really nice just to sit there with them and just think like, wow, like, you felt part of it. The club really made you feel like you were a valid member, and you weren't just some numpties. Because we're just some numpties that sit and talk about Hibs. Half the stuff we say is not even right. The predictions are wrong. A lot of folk disagree with us. Some folk do agree with us. Like, and in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter what we've got to say. Do you know what I mean? Like, but for the club to take an interest in that and actually invite us along, I thought was like, it was really hard to sort of put into words. But I I feel like a big brother to Jack at times, just because he's like, I'm a wee bit older than him, but I feel it's weird. It's like when you get a wee bit older, like you get more excited for other folk. Like, didn't get me wrong, I was really excited that I was there, but I thought, I'm so glad he's here because he'll be buzzing. Like, and I knew he would really enjoy it. Do you know what I mean? And I knew that he would. It was sort of Jack's night because it was Jack's thing. Jack does the women's football. Without Jack, we wouldn't do the women. We wouldn't really touching the women's football. So for me, I was delighted that,
like a proud dad.
I got to be there. Where am I? I was a wee bit like a proud dad. So it was strange, and obviously, it was class. Like, it was a good night as well. It was a really good night.
Beating Hearts that night, it can't get much better, can it?
Exactly. I know it was good, and they played well as well, which was great.
Now, Charlie, what was your thoughts on that night? I mean,
it was funny because all the podcasts were there, and that was really nice to see that it wasn't just us that got invited. Like, I think if it had been just us, I'd be like, oh, that's a strange one. But no, like Calvin said, mate, I think I was definitely more excited because Jack was coming as well. Like Calvin said, it was a class night, and we got to meet some like pretty cool people that were there. Like Jack Ross, when he was still his manager, was there, and like John Potter was there, and Jake Doyle Hayes was in the stand. So we got to have a wee chat with him before it. And from the Gorgie divide, Ann Budge was sitting 2 rows behind us, and it's like all these people that you see on the telly or you see at games that you're like, they're like, I'd never ever dream of having a 5-minute conversation with a Hibs manager before a game. And it's just like to get that recognition for the work that we do. Like Calvin said, it's a full circle moment. And when we started it, we'd never have dreamt of being asked to go to hospitality or just being, even just some of the other stuff that hasn't happened yet, but we've been asked to potentially do in the future has been really cool. And that night was it really was the peak of my podcasting experience so far, just getting to do that. And the hope is that it's not just a one-time thing for the podcasting community to get there, but for us especially, it just shows that the work that we do is valued, and that is appreciated from us to the club.
Yeah, even like seeing it on Facebook myself, I was like, yes, boys, on you go, like absolutely buzzing for you. And it being a women's football thing, Jack in his brilliant suit. I mean, Jack Ross could be surrogate dad as well. I think we spoke about it for the Aberdeen game. Never seen a bigger smile on a lad's face.
He looked the part as well. Like, he looked dead smart. Like, he really did. He really showed everyone up. But just to touch on what Charlie was saying there as well, like meeting the guys for the other podcast, like it's quite funny. Like, I didn't realise how tall Matty Fernie was. Because you only see him sitting at a computer. I thought he must be a wee guy. He was quite tall, eh? And it was nice sitting chatting with quite a lot of the other boys and that as well. Like, I enjoyed seeing them. It was quite good. It kind of made it this wee community that was there. It kind of like made it real. Because these folk you were talking to online and that, like throughout the pandemic and listening to their podcasts and whatever. Because I listen to all the Hibs podcasts, like, and it was really nice just like to sit down and like actually see everybody. It's weird.
I've no long started listening to like long bangers. That's only listening to sort of Hibs talking yourselves and keep seeing everyone saying long bangers, and you say to yourselves like, right, I'm going to have to get that in my ears, and it's good seeing it's like a big round circle for all yous. It's not like when you see down south, Man United podcast didn't like each other, Arsenal podcast didn't like each other and all that. It's just you've just created one big community for yourselves where, yous are mates through it. It's good to see, but I think it shows that, there's no competition. It's like, no, we'll big each other up here.
I think it's quite easy to get caught up in that, like you're saying. Like, it's quite easy to sort of think, it's quite easy to fall into the trap of trying to be competitive, like you see down south and all that. But for us, like, if anything, like we've made mates through it, which has been one of the best things. Like, I went to the away game at Livingston. I just went by myself, and then as Charlie was obviously in Stirling and Jack couldn't make it, I ended up sitting next to the boys for down the slope and long bangers, and it was a good night. Turned into a good night. It was good.
Well, the football wasn't good anyway.
Nah.
So sort of moving, like getting towards who's your sort of dream guest to get on? Who would be the pinnacle for guests to get on? Just for each of you, because it'll be different for both of you.
I think for me, I'd love to get someone like John McGinn on. He's my favourite house player ever. So for me personally, to interview my favourite ever player would be amazing. Or even like one of the 2016 Cup winning team. I think David Gray is definitely one that we could get on. Or I'd love, there's so many in that team. John McGinn was obviously in that team, but I think John McGinn would be my dream one. And hopefully in the future we can get that to happen.
100%.
I'd have to agree with Charlie. We actually tried to get him on through the club, but Aston Villa don't really let him do any media duties for other clubs. Like Hibs have tried to get him back to do some stuff for Hibs and that as well, but unfortunately he's not been able to. But I would say John McGinn, like just to hear the stories and that, and like just to hear like if he thought his career would end up the way it has and all of that. Do you know what I mean? Like, and he's got some great stories because he was in a great team and winning the cup and that. Because I know he grew up a Celtic man, but I reckon he's probably a Hibby now. Like, cool to hear.
I listen to Open Goal quite a lot, and I know Cy Ferry and that have tried to get him on, and Villa just aren't having it at all. So I don't think these are the only ones that would try and get him on, and getting on with Hibs fans would be unreal, because I think everyone remembers the documentary after the Cup, Hearts Away, love it.
Aye, that was class.
It's just meatball, innit?
I have also thought, like, in terms of like who would be the pinnacle, like I think one of the best ones would be I'd love to get all the guys for all the Hibs podcasts on one.
That'd
like,
be class.
I don't know what we'd do, but like if we went to Easter Road and like film like a weekend, if we'd won, well, I actually had it in the pipeline. If we'd won the cup, obviously got beat off Celtic, but if we'd won the cup, we were getting the cup on our podcast, and we were going to go down to Easter Road, me, Charlie, and Jack, and we were going to film it, have the podcast, us three there, but have the cup on the trophy on the desk. Unfortunately, they lost it, but it would have been nice to have that and maybe have some of the other guys for the podcast there as well. Came what I mean, and done a wee
just like a round table.
I think something like that would be really cool. I really do. That's something I'd like to aim for in the future. Like.
Mm-hmm. So, boys, what's the plans going forward with the podcast? Obviously, you've got to brilliant standards now. Getting in with Hibs, you've got recast on with yous. Going places. Where's it going 2022?
I think on a personal level, it's just cranking out the quality we're already cranking out. I think I don't think much if anything needs to change really. I think we're doing some cracking stuff, and it's been funny. Like we've recorded a podcast every day since Saturday. Obviously we're on your podcast tonight, Andy, but like I've been on a Zoom call with Calvin twice and Jack yesterday. I don't know when this will go out, but imagine it's the 11th of January you're hearing this. Since Saturday I've recorded 4 or recorded 3 and been on 1, and I think that's really where I want it to go. I want it to be a consistent thing of like we're producing some top class stuff, we're getting great feedback, like the one we done about Elias Melkerson's been well received, and just I want that. It was a cracking record, and just I think I'm really excited about the future, and I think podcast wide, I think it would be great if we could have more of these opportunities with Hibs, and we'll see what comes of that this year. But I think just keep going and keep getting better and better, because ultimately we're looking to be the best that we can be. So I think just keep getting better and better.
Mm-hmm.
I completely agree with Charlie. I think one of the things I was trying to do is I'm quite keen on getting we are quite precious about who we want to bring into the team, because we started this off as mates. Like we didn't want to invite someone on that would maybe or get them to come aboard and we don't know them too well and perhaps we fall out or something like that. Like I'm not really into the drama. Do you know what I mean? So they'd have to be spot on. Like, hey, But we put out a wee opportunity the other day saying, Ken, if anybody wanted to write a sports blog, like a Hibs blog, because there's quite a lot of independent folk, and I thought, like, Ken, it's young guys at university and that, I thought, Ken, it'll help us, but it'll also help them. Like, they could build a wee portfolio up of like some of the stuff they've done, you know, and maybe like write up one of the interviews we've done with someone or whatever they wanted to do, and they could use it for their own portfolio at uni or whatever, like their journalism degree. I think giving people opportunities like that would be quite cool. Like if we could help someone else with the podcast.
Yeah.
But just like Charlie said, I think I went back to work today and I was thinking, Chris, I wish I could just like go home, like edit my podcast and that and get them out, and like, and that's what I like doing. Like, I like putting the content out and seeing folk enjoying it and seeing like the views and that go up, because I think, oh, that's a good thing, like, it's worthwhile doing, you know. I think next we've tried to, obviously we do make a hell of a lot of money doing it, but we've got a wee bit. Me and Charlie have got a t-shirt each and a mug that Charlie still needs to collect off me. I've still got it waiting for you, mate. So I need to give you that next time I see you. But maybe just get like a nice, like a jumper or something with like the Strong Opinion Hibs on it. I quite like that idea, you know. Something that we can sort of just show ourselves off a wee bit, like kind of like folk could recognise it. I think that's probably something we'll maybe look at doing to expand the brand. I think also probably something like that would be pretty good. I think just I've seen quite a lot of Arsenal fan TV and that they've got their own like their jumpers and that, and I wouldn't want to wear it to sort of like be all look at me. Like I think I just want to wear that just to be proud, to be like, wow,
represent yourselves.
I'd be proud of myself to think like, wow, like I've actually like got a podcast that sort of folk listen to. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think it'd be cool just to wear a jumper. I'd be proud to wear it. I really would. I think that's something that I'd like to do. Well, in terms of where it's going in 2022, like Charlie said, I really like doing the fan interviews. So like if we sign a new player, for example, like I've really enjoyed it. The last two we've done, the Elias Melkerson one, that boy Reindeer Hot Dog was doing the rounds on Hibs Twitter, and I just sent him a message. I was like, fancy coming on and talking about it? And like guy was really open to it, and then I messaged Orlando City, the Orlando City Lions Den podcast, Orlando, Florida. And I asked him if they wanted to come on and talk about Chris Mueller, and we've got that one sitting in the bank we need to put out as well. So it's like, I mean, I'm talking to folk in like different time zones and that over a podcast. You know what I mean? That's rad, like, or half other side of the world. I like doing that. Maybe more of that. I think we tried to do it. Wasn't really well received, but we tried to do like wee after match interviews with folk just walking by, saying like, "Oh, do you want to like give your opinion?" Kind of like what Arsenal fan TV and that do, but a lot of folk weren't up for it. Like a lot of it was sort of like a lot of the guys that go to the Hibs games like middle-aged men and that, so they're not really up for that type of stuff. But the few we did do, they got like 600, 500, 600 views each. They're only like 4 or 5 minutes long, but I'd like to do more of that. It's quite, don't get me wrong, it is nerve-wracking. Like I was so nervous after the game, standing there like trying to film it and that. Like I didn't enjoy the game as much because I knew that was coming at the end and I was nervous about it. But when it works and it works well, it is good. It's really good. Like I enjoy that.
Because they can be good for views and just generating interest and
absolutely
retweeting and all that. It's, I mean, you do want to base yourself Arsenal fan TV, because I think a lot of what goes on there
pretty toxic.
But to get good opinions on it, and even people being like, that's wrong, that's what's gone wrong. It would have been interesting to see what folk thought gone wrong with Jack Ross, instead of just seeing Twitter being how it was. It would be interesting to like talk to people properly. Do you see yourselves going into like other like live events? You know, Open Goal have done it, Under the Cosh do it, and that. Do you see it going possibly that way if a opportunity came your way?
It's something that Jack is really keen on doing. I mean, I don't know what we could do to do a live event, but I think Long Bangers have done a wee Short Bangers live that I went to, and it was really good. So I think there is room for podcast to do a live show, but it's ultimately like you didn't want to just do the same stuff, like we want it to be unique. We want it to be our thing, what we're known for. So, there's, Jack's very keen on doing it. So I think there might be a conversation in the future about, well, what does that look like and how do we go about it? And, we've got contacts at the club that we can make it happen if it's something we want to do. But I think it'd be something that would be great to look into potentially in the future.
Even like doing like a collab with another Hibs podcast, doing it like yourselves and the boys feel long bangers of that, or
I think doing it
have it like
would be cool.
Because I think that's. I mean, I've been to one of the open goal events. I went to it when they're doing what's it called? I think it's on in Edinburgh in the summer.
Oh, the Fringe.
Oh, the festival.
The Fringe. I went to one of them and it was mad. Like Paul Hanlon was there, Lewis Stevenson was there, and I was just like, this is a bit mental. This is just normal guys talking about football, and I think you've got a different voice for it. You know what I mean? Like,
we're
not interesting anyway.
We're not as Raj's name.
Need to find yourselves a slaying, yeah.
Yeah, thanks in Jack or something.
I know. But that's what I've got for you boys. Thanks very much for coming on, sharing your thoughts, and honestly, all the best going forward with the podcast. I'm a keen listener. Been on twice myself. I mean, the rant after the cup final was hilarious.
Aye, that was a painful episode for sure.
I was. But as you were saying, Charlie, this will go out on Friday. This Friday, so it'll be Friday the 14th. We'll try to put them out weekly. So what I'll do is I'll put everything in the description, boys, for you. Like the Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everything.
Perfect.
That's what I say. It's been the Andy Rogers podcast. That's been Calvin and Charlie from Strong Opinion Hibs. Thanks very much, boys.
Cheers, mate.
I think he's froze.
That's all good.